أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
How are you today?
Allah is generous, alhamdulillah. I have life and I have iman.
Okay, so today we have our esteemed guest, Abu Bakr Carberry, also known as Alexander Carberry. Before we begin, maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself.
Allah, well, there's not much to tell. I mean, I was born in England. I grew up in a place called Guayana in South America. I became Muslim at 18. I wanted to study physics. I met a man of Allah and chose to learn from him instead. And I practice herbal medicine or traditional medicine. And I'm also interested in dealing with the issues that we have, and so I benefit immensely from modern medicine. And that's a lot of what I do. I've written on a number of things in the past. I'm interested in psychology, politics, history, philosophy, because all of them tell us something about the job that Allah gave us to do in this world. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
There's quite a lot going on there.
Well, Allah is generous. Yeah.
So you said you studied at 18. You accepted Islam. You had an interest with physics. At this time, were you still in South America, or were you back?
I became Muslim in Guyana. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Alhamdulillah.
And then, when did you move back to the UK?
Oh, I moved back to the UK. I think it was 88 or 89. Yeah. So I was a little older than 18 at the time, which gives you an idea that I'm not as young as perhaps I'd like to look.
So how did you get into the, I don't know what you want to call it, the business of healing or herbal treatment, whatever you call it? How did you get into that?
Unwillingly. It's interesting. When I was taken back to Guyana by my parents, my grandmother put me with this old woman. I used to spend my day keeping the company of an old woman who was 80-something. And we would talk, and she would pick herbs, and she would tell me what this was good for, and we would make teas for her, and so on. And, as a child, you just absorb these things. And I found that later in my life, some of these things would come back to me. But also that having begun there, things stuck to you. And so there would be different times in my life when people would come and they would ask me for help with particular things. And I think it was about 7 years ago, I was with a Hakim, and I was trying to get him to write a book on the cosmology which that science is based on, the science of medicine amongst Muslims, or Islamic medicine. And it was Hakim Salim Khan from Leicester. And when I thought I had him, I said, well, you should write this book. He looked at me, he said, no, Abu Bakr, I shouldn't write the book. That's your book. You should write that book. So then I set about writing that book, and that book's called The Elemental Dance, which I never have published, but which really looks at what we would call ilm qawniya. It's cosmology. It's how is the universe made from the point of view of natural sciences. And so then I wrote that book, and then I started to apply it to psychology and I wrote a little book called Know Yourself. And so that was about the personality types, because the Muslims have a science of personality types. And so, yeah, my arm got twisted. They twisted my arm. I mean, people kept coming, and eventually I realized that, well, I have to treat.
Yeah.
And then I I then ensured that I completed those, it's an ongoing thing, but began to complete those studies of those things which I began when I was 3. Yeah.
So it was meant to be, like they say.
Well, everything is.
So you run a clinic at the moment in Burton-upon-Trent?
Burton-on-Trent, yes.
And that's where you reside yourself?
I do, yes.
What kind of people do you see in your clinic? Is it predominantly Muslims or?
I see a mixture, but predominantly Muslims, predominantly Asian. Yeah, but I get all types.
And is there a large demand for the type of medicine, if you can call it medicine, that you practice?
Well, one of the things I'm ruthless about are results. So I get results, and when you're sick, when you're really sick, you just want to be well. So yes, there is a demand. People can be quite skeptical, but that's not my interest. My interest is, it's quite simple. If you do what I show you or ask you to do, you see results. If you don't see results, you don't come back. Alhamdulillah, and people come back.
Do you find that a lot of people come to yourself maybe after having tried everything else?
Yeah, I'm usually the last resort. Yeah, I'm the afterthought.
How if you feel that you're getting results and maybe in other areas people are not seeing results, and so why they come to yourselves? How can we change that, or do you feel we need to change that so that people come to the likes of yourselves maybe as soon as they have the problem?
Yeah, well, the thing is that people vote with their feet, and that's a ni'mah, that's a blessing of Allah that people do that, because it means that they can turn to the places that work. And I feel that we live in a society. For instance, somebody has a stomach problem, and immediately we look at the stomach. We say, okay, no, there's a stomach problem, so there's a problem with the stomach. But if there's a crack on the wall of your house, you look to see what started it, because if you plaster over it, that if the thing that started it isn't fixed, it'll just crack again.
Of course.
Right? And we just don't seem to take that approach in modern medicine. If the problem's on the elbow, we look at the elbow. If the problem's on the head, we look at the head. Well, where did the crack start? And what is happening increasingly is that people are becoming disillusioned with that. So if they keep on doing the same thing, then they'll fill my clinic up. So, that's their business. I'm a Muslim, we have a problem, and it has to be solved. People are ill, and Allah has ni'mah, and they can enjoy it. And, if they want to keep sending people here that way, alhamdulillah, I'll treat them and I'll tell them about Allah.
Primarily would you look treating what we see as sort of physical illnesses, but then I've seen yourself speaking a lot about other societal problems like interest, mortgages. Is this something you're interested on the side, or do you feel that this is all connected?
Allah, it's interesting. There's a question: what is illness? Yeah, because we see illness appearing in a person. Yeah, so we say he's ill, but for me, when a society is ill, some people will manifest it in extreme. So we are a society that loves sugar. We enslaved millions of Africans to grow sugar. Now, we're a society that consumes an incredible amount of sugar, and we have diabetes. So is diabetes the issue, the illness, or is the illness the fact that we consume so much sugar? And that something had gone wrong in our civilization, and we saw it necessary to enslave millions of people in order to produce tons and tons of sugar, which we will just stuff into the mouths of everyone, regardless of whether they got ill or not. So, for me, the person who is a healer cannot just look at the physical ailment. They have to look at the whole pattern. What is the disease of the society? Our society has a fundamental disease. Well, it's got a few, but it's built, its political order is built on one fundamental disease. And that disease is called riba. Because they say, as Allah says in his book, he says, they say that trade is like riba. This society says that trade is like riba. It calls riba trade. And Allah has blessed trade, and riba is cursed. And many of the ailments we are seeing are the result of riba. And riba is more than just interest. You know, it's a way of wanting a return for nothing.
So, I mean, with interest, first of all, as Muslims, we all know or have heard of that interest is haram. How do we define interest?
Well, the first thing is that interest is a part of riba, or in Urdu you'd say sood. Yeah. So when you give a loan and you want more than you gave, this is sood, this is interest. But riba is wider than interest, yeah, because monopolies would be part of riba. Okay, dealing in uncertainty, gharar, would be part of that. Yeah, trading in debts would be part of that. So that when money was where you have a currency where that represents some money that had been deposited with someone, and that currency, and that's being spent, that would be seen as haram also. So when you have a money which is even worse than that represents nothing, so it's a currency which represents nothing, which is what our modern paper currency, which if I take £5, I get another £5, I get another piece of paper again. Yeah, that type of currency is also considered riba. It's a trick. In fact, it's not a riba. It's a con. So it's not allowed.
So, I mean, obviously in Islam, we know everything that's forbidden for us, there's a wisdom behind that, and ultimately it's for our own benefit to avoid that.
Mm-hmm.
Something quite obvious would be alcohol. You know, alcohol is not good for you. So, that's obvious. So, with interest, because personally I feel that just because it's not told to us, because we can just say, I've got a bank account, and then every month they give me £1.79 or whatever, and it seems that doesn't mean anything to us. And
okay.
So how
you see, interest is a tiny part of riba.
Okay.
In the modern world, interest is a tiny part of riba. Okay. How does it affect us? Let us look at money. Modern money. It's a currency, it's not a real money. How is modern money created? You've got the retail banks, the small banks, they go to a central bank, and the central bank issues them money as a debt, right? So the central bank creates that money out of nothing and gives that to the bank. So the bank, let's say the bank borrowed £1 million. Okay? Usually we have something called a fractional reserve, which says that the bank itself can lend out, if it took £1 million from the central bank, it can lend out, if the reserve is 10%, it can lend out 10 times the amount of £1 million as long as it keeps. So it keeps 1 million, and it lends 9. Okay? Now, you go to the bank, it means that you have to borrow 9 million. But basically, banks are allowed to create money out of nothing. It means that your money, it creates money by creating debt. Okay? Now that is a problem. Because to expand the money supply, the bank must create debt. Okay? So basically it enslaves the society to debt. So everybody has to work hard to repay them. But by creating debt, it is increasing the money. So the money, every year the money will buy less. Okay? So if you notice, £10 10 years ago could buy a lot. Now £10 could buy nothing. So the problem with currencies that are created like this is that their value is always decreasing. So basically, it is stealing the wealth from everyone as you expand the money supply. And the way it works is that you've got to expand the money supply, and expanding the money supply means expanding debt. So we have a society that's debt enslaved. So in a society like that, you're going to have problems with people not having energy because they work so hard to repay the debt. You're going to have problems with stress, anxiety about risk, etc. Many mental conditions, all of that.
So, I mean, from the way you've explained, it seems no one in their right mind will want any part of this. So, when did it begin, and did people not oppose this?
Yes, it did. I mean, on this island, the last war to defend against this way of seeing the world was Bonnie Prince Charlie, who died. Whose army was cut down in Culloden. Napoleon, refused to pay the bankers their money. France was, had a revolution, was struck down by debt. Napoleon said, "I'll pay them cash for nothing." Yeah, and then unleashed his armies on the whole of Europe. This problem began to develop when a Pope, I think it was Pius, who allowed interest. It came in through interest. And then there was an expansion of the merchant class. And as the merchant class grew, so did the usurious practices, the riba practices that they had. Until what happened in Europe is that merchant class overthrew the aristocratic class. Right across Europe. I mean, that began with the French Revolution. And they brought in a new society. They brought in a new way of doing business and running states. So, you'll notice that a central bank is a private institution which a government borrows from. But the same government taxes the nation to borrow, taxes the nation anyway. So why not pay for what it wants from the taxes themselves? Yeah? No, but we must borrow from the banks and pay them interest. So that way, became part of our educational system, part of the educational teaching of things like the science of economics, which contains some nonsenses in it. I mean, one thing is that there's no explanation for inflation. Well, I just gave you the explanation for inflation. It's the creation, it's expansion of debt. Yeah, when debt is money, you have to lend. You have to continually expanding the money supply. You have an infinite money supply and only finite goods. So then more money is chasing the same goods. What's going to happen? You pay more. Yeah. So then it's not surprising that the usury is the only thing, or riba is the only thing Allah declares war upon in the Quran. Allah warns of harb min Allahi wa rasuli for only one thing, and that's riba. And riba is 70 times worse than having sexual relations with your own mother inside the Kaaba. Na'udhu billah. This is a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that there will be an age in which there isn't, you cannot escape the dust of riba. I think we are definitely in that age.
So that brings us on now as Muslims living in the dust of riba. What are the solutions to this? How are there any solutions to this? How can we at least maybe set the foundation at least to...
We are the people of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We are the people of Muhammad. Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is rahmatul alameen. He is the mercy to the world. This nation is a mercy to the world. And Allah gave us the book and the sunnah. These are the things that we put into practice. We must solve the problems of our time. We have the books of trade. We have the Muwatta, we have all of these books of trade that we have, because the biggest part of why I mentioned Muwatta, the biggest part of Muwatta is the Kitab al-Buyur, right? The book of trade. Okay? The illness of our age is that they have said that trade is like riba. All we have to do is bring trade. We just have to bring trade. And we are the civilizing influence of the world. So as long as we encourage within our communities bad manners and evil practices, then we cannot be the mercy to the world. Because what is special about this nation is that we enjoin the right and we forbid the wrong. When we do not enjoin the right and forbid the wrong, then we are not the best nation raised up amongst mankind. And we will be punished for that. We were chatting earlier today. Our community in Britain is the sickest religious community on the island. Because we are not enjoining the right and forbidding the wrong. Yeah, we are the Rahmatul Alameen. We are the mercy to the world. We open our doors. We welcome the people. We feed them. We love them. That's how Muhyiddin Chishti conquered India. It's a land of Hindus. Look how many Muslims come out of that land. Yeah. If we do the same thing here, then this will be a land in which people will turn around again. Like they come to around and ask me. I say, Assalamu alaikum. They say, you Muslim? Maybe they'll be the ones going, yeah. Assalamu alaikum. Well, you're Muslim. Well, you're not English. But you're not English.
So that brings us on to mortgages. Because I feel hot topic at the moment. Most people find themselves in a mortgage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like part of growing up almost, that you get a job, start a family, you get a mortgage, and even many Muslims feel that's the way to do things. How is mortgage different to a normal loan, interest-based loan? Is it the same, or is it something different?
Well, an interest-based loan is a mortgage. It's the same. It's just a product, except that the mortgage contract, because mortgage means death pledge. So until you finish paying that loan, that house is not yours, and the bank can take it. So the point is that with a normal loan, if there's no collateral, then you just don't pay it back. The mortgage ties you around the neck. With a collateral that you fear to lose, because you lose it and you don't have a place for your people to live or whatever it is. The problem isn't really mortgages. The problem is how do we own our own homes? Do we need to own our own homes? How do we have a place to live in? And if we intend to own properties, then how is it halal for us to own them? We solve that problem, and we solve the problem for this whole island, because the people on this island, nobody likes a mortgage. We have to have them, but nobody likes them. So we solve that problem, and we have a dawah to this whole island.
Have there been any suggestions or solutions to owning a house without going through
Well,
mortgage?
when your parents and grandparents came to this country, nobody would give them a loan. How did they buy their houses? Well, they've forgotten how they did that. You know, committee? They use committee, right? Yeah. When my people came to this country, how did they buy their houses? They called the same institution committee. We call it susu or something, or boxan or partner, depending on where you come from. They did the same. That's how they bought their properties. How did, the ones of them who had businesses, how did they start it? Exactly the same thing. What happened?
Would you not say the house prices were more in an affordable range back then, or is that not the case?
Perhaps, but what about the Muslims getting together and buying land and building houses? Houses which would suit our lifestyles. Build communities that would suit our lifestyles, in which people who were non-Muslim would fight to come and live in because of the kinds of social conditions in which we have. No, but we're not doing that. The point is that we have Islam. We have this way of life which comes, from a Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam who taught and whose way survived. And we're the last. There will not be another nation after us. It is our responsibility to confront the issues of each age, because we are that nation, and we'll be questioned about it, and we will be punished for not fulfilling that responsibility.
So as you may be aware of that, there are fatwas out there suggesting that live in this country due to difficulty, maybe first mortgage is allowed, depending on situations. We don't want to get into the discussion of the fatwa, but if someone does go and get a mortgage, are we adding to the problem, or is that just my mortgage, my house?
It's a con. The money is not real in the first place. Okay? The one problem I have is that Allah keeps repeating in the Quran, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, have you no sense? Okay? Does this nation have no sense? We must be the nation that has sense, because if we don't have sense, who will? Okay? This problem cannot continue, and we have to solve it. It is worse than zina with your own mother in the Kaaba. So you can give me any fatwa that you like. How can a Muslim ever be comfortable with that situation? Yeah? You can give me so many fatwas. They can give me a fatwa that I should only use toilet paper, but I have a choice to use water. Okay? I will use water. Now, this is worse than that. You can give fatwas about anything. Basically what it's saying is that in this situation, yeah, it's okay, you can do it. But it does not solve the problem. And we are the nation that's left to deal with those problems. So what's going to happen to us on the Yawm al-Qiyamah? What are we going to say? Because Allah gives you all the warnings. When we go to the angels, when the angels come and ask us, well, why didn't you do what you were supposed to do? And they say, no, well, we were in the land, we were oppressed in the land. Well, was not the land, was not the earth, why couldn't you migrate? Okay? But we've migrated into it. You understand? We're in trouble. We're in trouble. But the world's in trouble. And so we're just on the wrong end of the problem. We want to be on the end of the solution, not the end of the, because when we bring the solution, it's dawah. Instead, the people who are kafir are more vocal about these matters than we are. Yeah? So then you get the alim who has the revelation and he's blind to the reality of the situation. I get an alim who's constantly saying sood that riba is just interest. I mean, and he's read the book of fiqh, any book of any of the kitab al-amwals, the books of money, will lay bare these matters. Any of the books of trade will lay this basic knowledge. What has happened to them? What has happened to them?
So you said riba is much wider than interest.
Yes.
And you said monopoly was one of
Yes.
those problems. So we're seeing it today with supermarkets monopolizing not just food but many other aspects. Again, as Muslims, is our job to boycotting is the answer? Growing our own food, or what's
the mark of the Muslims is that we are rarely ever against something.
Yeah.
We're for Allah and His Messenger. We don't like being against things because what you're against defines you. Okay? We bring a new way to be that is an expression of the vast self-form of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in his first community. That's what we bring. So, in this land, people must have access to food that is tayyib and halal. Okay? It must be halal and tayyib. Well, the way the money is earned to go into those business can transform it from being halal to haram. Yeah? Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, when he knew that a lamb had been stolen, he asked what was the length of life of a sheep and worked out the time to say, okay, well, if it lives this long and it's dead, then I won't eat any mutton for this period because I don't want to eat that. I don't want the haram to go into my belly. Yeah? So what's happened to us? Okay? If we bring that attitude to this land, we will transform this land. People want to talk about freedoms and so on. Well, yeah, bring this way. Because man must have a deep inner freedom to express an outer freedom. If we are not law confirming inside of ourselves, then it has to be imposed upon us from outside of ourselves. Yeah? You cannot speak about freedom when, you've got to have an ever-expanding police force. Because what we must recognize is that we must build human beings who understand their place in the world, understand the impact that their actions have, and that they live with that, because those people are law confirming. Those are the free men and women. So we bring this completely new way of looking at the world. It's not about chopping hands and so on that the kuffar have boxed us into. We think that we must be harsh. No, the Muslims were incredibly generous, and if you look at the buildings that they built, look at the Taj Mahal. Look at Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Look at Alhambra in Spain. Travel through Syria. Look at these places. Look at Morocco. Look at the incredible beauty and the energy and love of the people. And show me where you will find that in the world. That's what we bring. That is what we bring.
Seems like we've got our work cut out in these lands, no doubt.
Alhamdulillah. What a time to live.
So may Allah give us the tawfiq of bringing change to ourselves and to this land, inshallah.
Ameen. Ameen.
Very nice to have you here, inshallah.
It is my honor. Thank you. I'm at your service.
Inshallah, we can do this again sometime.
I am at your service.
Jazakallah.
Alhamdulillah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين الحمد لله.